Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first ever virtual Church Librarians Day. I'm glad you have joined us today. If you have never been to a Librarians Day, then this will be completely new to you. And if you have been to a Librarians Day, this may be completely new to you as well, because it's completely new to me. So I am getting ready to present the biography list. So if you have that handy, you can pull that out. And this is the first one I'm filming, so I'm learning as I go. So we're all in this together. If I start speeding up too fast, I know you're not here to tell me to slow down, but remember, we'll be posting these videos after we're done here today, so you can go back and watch it over and over again if you want to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So mine's printed on a green sheet, and if I mail them to you, they should be on a green sheet. But we're gonna get started on the biography list. First book on the list is called The Mennonite Rogue. This is a memoir of Valera Adams, and it tells about her story as a Mennonite daughter. And she ended up marrying a man named Joseph, who she thought was the love of her life, and he had told her he was going to become a Mennonite minister, but that was very, very far from the truth. And there was lies, betrayal, poverty, and deceit. There was involvement with organized crime, and there were always other women. There was hardly ever a moment of peace and security. She had married a Mennonite rogue. So that is the story of Valera Adams. Next on the list is My Name is Tawny, and I Believe in Miracles. This is a young boy who was homeless. He's a refugee from already, guys. A refugee, I'm not sure where from, who moved to New York, and they were homeless. He learned to play the game of chess, and his life was forever changed. So the amazing true story of one boy's journey from refugee to chess champion. My Name is Tawny. There is a young reader's version of that as well, which we will get to in a later list. Get in the Game, Nothing Missing, You Have Everything You Need to Succeed by Kevin Atlas. And Kevin Atlas had a big dream of playing NCAA Division I basketball, and he was the very first player with a missing limb to do that. So this is his story of the challenges and how hard he worked to get in the game. Mennonite Daughter looks to be the opposite of Mennonite Rogue. This is the story of a plain girl, and she's inviting you into her loving tribute of growing up in a Mennonite family. So Mennonite Daughter, Marion Longenecker Beeman is that one. I Choose Peace. This is a follow-up to the I Am Second book that came out a few years ago. This is just the story of different, mostly celebrities, but also just regular people and their journey in faith. So I was gonna see if I could find some names for you. Kathy Lee Gifford, Chip and Joanna Gaines, Lee Yi, Phil and Kay Robertson, Ben King, Eric Metaxas, Cy Young Award winner, and just some other names. So I Choose Peace. That's a hardcover book. In Pursuit of Love by Rebecca Bender. This is one that I have read, and it is the story of Rebecca's story of what she now knows as being trafficked. She was a young girl who got into a relationship and ended up in Las Vegas, thinking that she had met the man of her dreams. And on the very first night they got there, he turned her into a prostitute. So it's her struggle of 6 years that she lived in prostitution. She had a daughter that she was taking care of, and just the different struggles. Is one that there are some hard parts to read, but she does a great job. And I loved the faith that she had, even while she was in a life that she knew she shouldn't be. God was there with her, and he was sustaining her, and then eventually helped her to get out, and now she helps other women. So In Pursuit of Love, One Woman's Journey from Trafficked to Triumphant by Rebecca Bender. I would recommend this one. Grace from the Rebel, Two Fathers' Road to Reconciliation After the Oklahoma City Bombing. This is a fairly new story, an incredible story of friendship and forgiveness. So Grace from the Rebel by Jean Bishop. Swimming for Freedom, Tara Bradham. I'm guessing this was supposed to come out during the 2020 Summer Olympics, but sadly it's a little early. A true story of faith, hope, and victory. Tara Bradham is a United States swimmer, and she's been in the Olympics. So she had a injury to her shoulder and has made an unconventional, miraculous comeback. So, Swimming for Freedom. Blaze of Light by Marcus Brotherton, inspiring true story of the Green Beret medic Gary Bickrick, Medal of Honor recipient. Oops. So would be for fans of Unbroken and Hacksaw Ridge. So a World War II hero story. Blaze of Light. Child of Grace. You guys aren't here to help me if I get out of order, so I apologize. Child of Grace, a death row story. This was Dr. Chris Brown takes you on a journey of faith as he and his father discover God's grace in the most unlikely of circumstances. A look at redemption through the eyes of a child who sees his wayward father saved on the way to death row and follows his own road through darkness on the way to redemption. So, just an inspiring story there. Andrew Brunson, God's Hostage is the next one on our list. A true story of persecution, imprisonment, and perseverance. He was finally freed from Turkish prison in October 28 after 735 days. So that's a pretty amazing story. Arrested in 2016 and freed in 2018. I Still Believe by Jeremy Camp. And that goes also with In Unison. They were published by two different people, but this is the first part of the story and the second part. So I Still Believe, it was actually made into a movie that came out right at the beginning of quarantine and all the things shutting down. So it wasn't even in the theaters very long. But this is the story of Jeremy and his first wife who had ovarian cancer even when they married, and she had made a recovery and then ended up passing away very quickly after their wedding. It's a very beautiful story of love, and she is had a very inspirational faith. And then this is the story of him and his second wife. Her name is Adrienne, and they are both singers. This is the unfinished story of Jeremy and Adrienne Camp. So this was the one made into a movie, and then if you want to know the rest of the story, you can get this one. The next one is Gentle on My Mind, Glenn Campbell. I just got this one, my mom just got this one from my dad. I haven't heard yet, but we haven't had it very long, but grew up listening to a lot of Glenn Campbell in our house. So In Sickness and in Health with Glenn Campbell, and he just passed away not too long ago from Alzheimer's. So this is by his wife, Kim Campbell. The next one, I believe, is Before and After. These are real life stories. So last year we probably talked a lot about, I can't remember the name of the book, Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. And it was a fictionalized story, but of some true events that actually happened with the Tennessee Children's Home. So Lisa Wingate contacted a friend of hers, Judy Christie, who was a newspaper writer, and they tracked down, once that story came out, people started talking about their own adventures with the Tennessee Children's Home, their own stories. And so they wanted to get those down on paper. So that's what this is. They tell the story of what happened in the year after that book came out and how so many survivors and their children came forward. This is a very inspirational story. It is written more newspapery, if that's the right word, more facts than the fiction book, which was very storytelling. So, but I really enjoyed this, and they do a great job in just the miraculous ways that people found them and the amazing stories and how people survived what happened there. So, Before and After. Sam Collier, A Greater Story, My Rescue, Your Purpose, and Our Place in God's Plan. He was adopted as a baby, he and his twin sister, and God just has been after him. Tells the inspiring story of abandonment, sacrifice, gratitude, and rescue, revealing how God is always doing something bigger and better than we can imagine. So just an inspirational story of God at work. Love Anyway, an invitation beyond a world that's scary as hell, by Jeremy Courtney. He is the preemptive love founder, has seen the very worst of war. He's risked his life saving lives on the front lines, and he's come face to face with ISIS, been targeted by death threats, and narrowly escaped airstrikes. So this is his incredible journey of being the founder and CEO of Preemptive Love, which is a relief and job creation community working to end war. So that's an inspirational story there. Another woman who started a company, You Are the Key, Turning Imperfections into Purpose, by Caitlin Crosby, and she is the founder of the Giving Keys, which those are necklaces that you can have special words printed on. You Are the Key tells the story of what is possible when you follow big dreams with a big heart. Former Hollywood talent who didn't finish college, never got an MBA, and wasn't supposed to become a CEO, yet that's exactly what she did. So that's an inspirational one. Charlie Daniels, Never Look at the Empty Seats. We do not have it in stock right now, so it is the story of Charlie Daniels, the country music singer, and we should have that back in stock soon, but it is out right now, so I can't show it to you. Another country music singer, Shotgun Angels, My Story of Broken Roads and Unshakable Hope, Jay DeMarcus, and he is a member of Rascal Flatts, which is a country music band, if you don't know. And it's never before told stories that have shaped his journey. So there's that. Rebecca Dang, this has been on my list to read for a long time, and I had it on my desk, but I haven't made it yet. What They Meant for Evil. She is, many stories have been told about the famous lost boys, but now for the first time, a lost girl shares her hauntingly beautiful and inspiring story. And she was one of the first unaccompanied refugee children to enter the United States in 2000 after South Sudan's second civil war took the lives of most of her family. So it's telling her story of life in Sudan and then how she came to America, how a lost girl of Sudan found healing, peace, and purpose in the midst of suffering. So I think that one sounds really heartbreaking but interesting at the same time. And this one has actually been in the news, continues to be in the news. What is a Girl Worth, by Rachel Denhollander. My story of breaking the silence and exposing the truth about Larry Nassar and the USA Gymnastics. So it is the story of the women's gymnastics scandal that came out a couple of years ago, and she was one of the first to break her silence. So it's her journey from an idealistic young gymnast to a strong and determined woman who found the courage to raise her voice against evil, even when she thought the world might not listen. So that would be a very inspirational story, and I've heard good things about that one. Death at the Grass Huts is, oh, sorry, almost skipped one. Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Sean Dietrich. He is a celebrated storyteller known as Sean of the South, and this is his memoir of losing his father at a young age and just the journey that he has made in that. And he has some fiction books out as well, but he is known, I guess, as Sean of the South. I've seen him on Instagram, and he is a well-known storyteller. So that is his story. Death at the Grass Huts is actually one that someone had asked us about this week, and I thought it looked really interesting. It's not here yet. A story of God's grace and human endeavor, and it is a story of a Mennonite missionary in, I think, Peru, somewhere in South America, and I can't remember the details on that, but that one, thought that you guys might enjoy that. The Journals of Jim Elliot, Missionary, Martyr, Man of God, by Elizabeth Elliot, edited by Elizabeth Elliot. This is a reprint, but it just came out 1978, so they just redid it, so it's probably not one that most of you have seen. So if you know the story of Jim and Elizabeth Elliot and the others, this will be a very interesting book to you. So these are straight from his journals. Alessandro Serenelli, A Story of Forgiveness. Many people are familiar with the story of Saint Maria Goretti and her grisly murder at the age of 11. On her deathbed, she said of her killer, "I forgive him and I want him to be with me in heaven." But how did her incredible forgiveness affect her murderer? While it took years, Maria's offer of mercy eventually transformed Alessandro's life. I'm not familiar with that story, but this is a story of forgiveness. And Beyond Valor, another World War II story of extraordinary heroism, sacrificial love, and a race against time. This is by John Irwin and William Doyle. Irwin's is one of the brothers that has made, no, that's wrong. Sorry. So this is a true story of astonishing courage, unfailing love, and abiding faith. We just got that this week, so I haven't had a real good chance to look at it, but Beyond Valor. Called Out, Why I Traded 2 Dream Jobs for the Life of True Calling by Paula Ferris. She was a beloved on-air reporter for ABC News and former co-host of The View, and she is sharing her journey of conquering fears that nearly kept her from the high-profile journalism and then facing the dangers when the world threatened to consume her. How she got burned out, but along the way she heard God calling her out of that dangerous place, and she struggled to find who she was outside of what she did. She discovered her true purpose and true calling. So Paula Ferris, Called Out. Next on the list is Robert Galati. I don't know if I'm saying that right. How an accident, alcohol, and addiction led me to God. And Robbie is a pastor in Tennessee. My husband's read several of his books, but this is his story of drug addiction and how he came back and how God continues to use him. So very inspirational. Prairie Breezes by, we know, most of you around here would know him as Jim Gehring, Theodore Jim Gehring. This is Odyssey from Pretty Prairie. It is a story of Jim who grew up there, and story of Pretty Prairie. It is not a small book, so a lot of things have happened in Pretty Prairie, but it is by a local author, and we've started to sell quite a few copies, so might be something you're interested in. Twice Rescued Child is a boy who fled the Nazis and found his life's purpose by Thomas Grauman. In 1939, as Nazi flags waved over the cobbled streets of Prague, Thomas Grauman excitedly boarded a train. "Go to Britain, learn English. When the Germans leave, you can come home," his mother assured her 8-year-old son. That was the last he would see of his mother and most of his Jewish family who died in concentration camps. This was Thomas's first rescue aboard what became known as the Kindertransport. 1 year later, and a dedicated evangelist in a Scottish village shared a different kind of salvation. Thomas dedicated his life to God, training as a nurse before setting out for missionary service in the Philippines. And when hardship struck, he found himself in the USA with unmet longing to reach the world. After the fall of communism, he returned to the Czech Republic, speaking joyfully to young people of his rescue, not once, but twice, and of his great and faithful God. So that one sounds really good, to me anyway. This must be the year for World War II. Oh, sorry, Vietnam. Another War I tap code, riveting true story of love, war, and life-saving communication. The untold story of an ex-Vietnam POW who brought hope, strength, and love of God to his fellow American POWs by secretly reviving the long unused military communication code. It became a lifeline to hundreds of military prisoners suffering from torture and abuse and helped them to come home with honor, their wills unbroken. So, tap code. Burden, a preacher, a Klansman, and a true story of redemption in the modern South by Courtney Hargrave. This has also been made into a movie. So it's a true story behind the movie. A powerful and timely story about an African-American reverend whose faith compelled him to help a KKK member leave a life of hate. Courtney. Okay. Daring to Live by Sherry Hunter. The Power of Sisterhood, How the Power of Sisterhood and Taking Risks Can Jumpstart Your Joy. Sherry's husband passed away unexpectedly at just 50 years of age. She was devastated, and with her whole world falling down around her, she turned to her friends, and they are the ones that helped her through. More than just a memoir, this empowering female travel log pairs emotionally resonant confessional storytelling with spiritual takeaways, challenging you to engage in your own life, surround yourself with friends who will support you, and face life's challenges with courage and faith. So, about overcoming loss and daring to live. Next one, Becoming Mama by Yvrose Telvort Ismail. This was a really powerful story of God at work. It says how I found hope in Haiti's rubble. And Yvrose is Haitian, and she had lived in Haiti most of her life, came to America, got her degree as a nurse. She was working as a nurse. She was in a bad marriage, and some things happened, and she felt God was calling her to go start a school in what she thought was Africa. She had had a vision of a place that God was telling her, this is where I want you to go. But she was so sure it was Africa. And she went back to visit her brother and family in Haiti, and he took her on a trip, and they turned the corner, and it was the exact, a vision of the exact spot that she had had in her dream. And so she knew that God was calling her to come back to Haiti. And it is just an amazing story of how she trusted God through so many things. She happened to be there during the Haitian earthquake. She had come back to the United States for just a little bit and came back and landed like basically that day that the earthquake happened, and how she and her new husband worked together to rescue children, and they have adopted over 30, I want to say. So there's a picture of her family. I just really was struck by her faith in God, and one of the stories that she tells in this book is when people say, what can we do? What can we give you to help your ministry? She says, I don't tell them anything specific. I say, you ask God, and you let God tell you what I need, because he knows way better than I do, and how God always sends just the right thing at the right time. So it's a book about her life, but it's a book about encouraging us to trust God for everything that we need. And it's a beautiful story, Becoming Mama. She was not able to have any biological children of her own, but God made her a mama in many, many other ways. A Prayer for Orion, A Son's Addiction and a Mother's Love. This is the story of Catherine James and her husband, who found out their son was using heroin, and their response in that. In this sensitive, vulnerable memoir, award-winning novelist James turns her lush prose into a new purpose to tell her family's story through the twists and turns of her son's addiction, overdose, and slow recovery. The result is not just a look at the phenomenon of drug abuse in suburban America, but also a meditation on the particular anguish of loving a wayward child and clinging to a desperate trust in God's providence through it all. So another one that would be probably hard to read for some of us, but very encouraging for others, for all of us. So A Prayer for Orion by Catherine James. Next on the list is Dying to Meet Jesus, How Encountering Heaven Changed My Life. We haven't had a lot of heaven stories lately. We all face difficult times when we struggle just to keep looking up. For author Randy Kay, the challenge was extreme. He died, but at that juncture, he met God and was restored to a life he had never thought possible. So, his story of seeing heaven in the afterlife and coming back. Tara Kyle, Profiles in Resilience, Courage and Faith, American Spirit. Tara Kyle is the one whose husband they made a movie about him called American Sniper, and he was killed by friendly fire several years ago. So this is her paying tribute to him and just telling different stories of other Americans who have built extraordinary lives after traveling down life's most difficult roads. By Tara Kyle, American Spirit. Like Those Who Dream by Roy Lesson. And Roy is the co-founder of Dayspring, which you might recognize. That's what most of our cards that we sell, our greeting cards in the store, come from Dayspring. And so he also writes a lot of their gift books, and he writes a lot of the cards himself. He raised in a Jewish home in the Bronx and went into a deep rebellion, and then eventually found Christ. And this is his story of his formative college years and then being called into a ministry of writing. So, like those who dream. Shifting Shadows: How a New York drug lord found freedom in the last place he expected. Herman Mendoza built his kingdom in Queens, New York. He made a fortune selling cocaine with his brothers up and down the eastern seaboard. He had apartments around the city for his mistresses and a home in the Poconos for his beautiful nuclear family. But when Herman and his brothers were busted in a large-scale crackdown, his kingdom crumbled. Ready to kill himself rather than live behind bars, Herman came face to face with the all-consuming love of God. He would never be the same. So this is his story, Shifting Shadows. Seven More Men and Their Secret of Greatness. This is a new one from Eric Metaxas, who has 7 men and then 7 women, and so now he has 7 more men. These are just short biography. If it was a fiction book, we'd call them novellas. I don't know what they're called if they're biographies. Martin Luther, George Whitefield, George Washington Carver, General William Booth, Sergeant Alvin York, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Billy Graham. So that's 7 More Men by Eric Metaxas and Their Secret of Their Greatness. Okay, this is probably my favorite biography of the year. Murder, Motherhood, and Miraculous Grace by Deborah Morkey. This is a story of a family who fostered children. They fostered many, many children over the years. And one of their, the families that they fostered had, I believe, 3 little children, might have been more, brothers and sisters, siblings that they had into their house. And they became very attached to these children. They worked with their birth mom to try to get them back into the home, but she was struggling, and Deborah felt like maybe it wasn't the right time or things weren't good, but social services disagreed and put the kids back in the home. And something very tragic happened with one of the children, which you can tell by the title. She disappeared, and whenever they went to visit, she was always at grandma's or doing something else, but she was missing for a long time before people really realized it. So this is the story of Deborah and how she felt called by God to keep a relationship with this birth mom, even when she was in prison, for doing something that we can't even comprehend. But Deborah kept in touch with her, and eventually they found out that the birth mom was pregnant in prison, and she asked Deborah to adopt her baby and raise her. So many touching stories in this, and again, it's a story about listening to God and following when you don't even want to do anything. You want to do the exact opposite of what he's telling you to do. But Deborah was faithful, and she even talks about words coming out of her mouth that she was like, I have no idea where that came from. So it's a beautiful story. There's hard parts as a mama to read because they are incomprehensible, but it's a beautiful story of God and his miraculous grace. So highly recommend that one. The Years the Locusts Have Eaten. Some of you may know Al and Nadine Peters, and they worked in women's prison ministry in Nebraska for a long time. I don't remember how many years. And these are letters that they kept throughout the years and after when they were done, letters from the women who were touched by their ministry, and a very inspirational story. So local authors, and just there's the stories from the women themselves. So The Years the Locusts Have Eaten. Again, I would encourage you all. It's very encouraging to see the impact of ministry in prison. Some women knew they would get out, some are in there for life and will never get out, but the impact that was made with Al and Nadine visiting them. So Becoming C.S. Lewis, pretty explanatory what it's about. A biography of young Jack Lewis, 1898 to 1918, so his first 20 years, by Harry Lee Poe. Okay, Awful Beautiful Life, another very inspiring story. This is the story of, it says, when God shows up in the midst of tragedy. So Becky Powell, and it's co-written by Catherine Ray. Becky Powell's lived in Dallas, I think. Very well-to-do family, very seemingly happy family, but her husband tragically commits suicide, and they find out after he committed suicide that he had embezzled millions of dollars, and she had no idea. So this is her story of recovery after that, and how the lawyers tried to say, you just paid 10 cents back on the dollar, that's what people expect, and you can use his life insurance money, and you can use all this. And she said, no, God is calling me to pay back every penny. So it's an incredible story of her tenacity to push forward on doing something that the world said, you don't need to do that, this is what's expected. And the impact that she had, even on the creditors, that it was their money that they needed back, but she even made an impact on them because of how she was so willing to go the extra mile and do more than she needed to. So Awful Beautiful Life, and it is a beautiful story of God's grace and how he helped her to forgive her husband and just walked alongside her in some very dark times. Okay, we made it to the last page. Okay, Help from Heaven, Andrea Jo Rogers. These are short stories of real life emergencies and how God has shown up. True stories of rescues, miracles, and answered prayers from first responders. So encouraging. This is the second one that she's come out with. So unforgettable stories of God showing up in amazing ways. Over Our Hearts, another local author. We have so many. I'm proud of this area. Shanna Lynn Schmidt. Sorry. A Mother's Journey, Learning to Listen In. And she is a mental health professional who found out that her 14-year-old daughter was pregnant. And this is their journey from basically that day until the baby was born and after, and just her thoughts, her reactions. It's a beautiful story of a mother and daughter, and more mother and how she was affected by all that. But I think some of you may know the family, and today is the 1-year birthday of the book that I'm filming it on. And so it's made quite an impact, and I can see that it would be very encouraging to others who are going through that or something similar. So Over Our Hearts. Nerves of Steel by Tammy Jo Schultz. I'm going to let Carol tell you about this one.
All right, Nerves of Steel by Tammy Jo Schultz. This is a biography, and she tells her story about becoming a pilot, and she tells about her early life and how it is. And then she wanted to be a pilot, and so she went through training, and the men were not exactly very nice about a woman wanting to be a pilot. And she talks about her faith in God and how her faith helped her through many of the various things that she went through. But everything that she went through prepared her for the day, April 17th, 2018, when I forget now what exactly happened to the plane, but it was severely damaged and she had to figure out how to land it. And so all of the experiences she had before that day helped prepare her to be calm and to get that plane down. And I think they only lost one passenger. Anyway, it is very good. I recommend it highly.
Okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, one's a shooter, Redemption of a High School Gunman. This is a memoir by personal testimony by T.J. Stevens, who, let me see what year it was. Twice pardoned, first by God and later by the state, T.J. Stevens now walks in freedom and grace. Reluctant at first to tell his story, but compelled now to share what God has done, he gives a firsthand account 4 decades later of what it was like to be a high school shooter. So, impactful. Eye of the Storm by Ryan Stevenson. Ryan is a contemporary Christian artist. His music's played on Caleb and other radio stations. This is experiencing God when you can't see him. And his debut book shares a zigzagging journey from farm boy to singer and songwriter and the life events along the way. So if you're a fan of Ryan Stevenson, you might want that. The Minister's Wife, a memoir of faith, doubt, friendship, loneliness, forgiveness, and more. Warm and witty and achingly honest, The Minister's Wife is a memoir and essays on choosing to belong. As Karen Stiller shares her own deep from the heart experiences as a minister's wife, she welcomes us to join her on a rich, difficult, yet ultimately grace-filled spiritual adventure. So, fairly new biography. John Tesh, haven't heard much from him for a while, but he used to be on Entertainment Tonight a long time ago, and is a very well-known piano player now. This is his story, Unleashing a Life of Purpose, Grit, and Faith. So John Tesh, he has, I believe, survived cancer. You'll hear it never before told stories how Tesh became the youngest correspondent at WCBS News, and just his life. So John Tesh, we are almost there. Some Kind of Crazy, an unforgettable story of profound brokenness and breathtaking grace by Terry Wardle. This one feels a little bit like Same Kind of Different as Me. A riveting story about a man who grew up in the Appalachian coalfields of southwestern Pennsylvania, part of a hardscrabble family of coal miners whose cast of characters included a hot-tempered grandfather with a predilection for blowing up houses, a distant and disapproving father, and a mother who disciplined him with harsh words and threats of hellfire. Sorry, it's not like Same Kind of Different. I thought it was. But in the tradition of hillbilly elegy and Educated comes this unforgettable story that reveals how a broken past need not get in the way of a healthy, satisfying future. So, Some Kind of Crazy. I think maybe it's just the font on the front that confused me. I've Seen the End of You, a neurosurgeon's look at faith, doubt, and things we think we know. In a gripping inspirational memoir, page-turning medical stories serve as a backdrop for a raw, honest look at how we can keep our spiritual footing when everything goes wrong. By W. Lee Warren, MD. And another musician who's written, actually a couple of them. I Am Redeemed, Learning to Live in Grace by Mike Weaver, who is in the group Big Daddy Weave. So another, we see our struggles and failures. God sees his due creation, set free by his love, redeemed. So I Am Redeemed. Born for This, My Story in Music by B.B. Winans. B.B. and C.C. Winans were big back in the 80s and 90s. Gospel singers, they're still out there, but it calls him gospel music royalty. So just his story of ups and downs in his career. Curveball by Barry Zito, and he is a Cy Young Award winner and 2-time World Series champion. Painfully an honest personal story of one of baseball's most intriguing players. So Barry Zito, Curveball. that is it for my biography list. We will, I should be back on live in just a minute, and we'll do some giveaways, and then you can join us in just a little bit for our next list. Thanks for joining us on our first ever virtual Librarians Day. Bye.